Hello and welcome to another episode of Sales Spotlight, your go to podcast for cold emailing and sales. I'm your host Anil, and today we have a very special guest with us, Anthony from Mission Inbox. Hey, Anthony, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Emil.
Yeah, Anthony is a prominent email delivery expert in the market. He has been running a lead generation agency before that, and he has worked with more than 70 clients. And these days, he's running, I think, Mission Inbox, right, which is email infrastructure tool. Am I right, Anthony?
Spot on.
Yeah. So we'll discuss a lot about email delivery, email infrastructure, what is happening in ESP side these days. So before we jump into the entire conversation, Anthony, I would love to know more about your a little bit of your background and what inspired you to start Peace and Inbox.
For sure. So again, Emil, thank you very much for having me. So I started my career ever since I started, like my first position was as an SDR at a lead generation agency. This lead generation agency was called Covio. Our focus was mostly like LATAM prospecting. Then we expanded into the US, eventually Asia, Europe, etc. So I've always been really familiar with the deliverability world. As an SDR, I had to take care of my own mailboxes. I had to take care of my own deliverability. So that's when I started to get my feet in the waters of the deliverability world. Eventually, I moved into another company called Senders, and this Senders company was, well, it's currently exists. And again, shout out to Benny for teaching me a lot of the things that I currently know. They're focused on high volume, high velocity emails, and again, with a different, unorthodox approach from the normal perspective. Again, you'll be able to send 100 emails per day from a single mailbox, reach an inbox all the way. That's when I started to get into know like really how email deliverability works in the backend, and eventually what led me to create a mission inbox, right? So overall this time I prospected clients like mostly SaaS, B2B startups, recruiting agencies, recruiting firms. I would say, well, pretty much any sort of industry out there. I went from healthcare to HR recruitment, SaaS, etc. So that's pretty much a little bit about my background. And again, since I said ever since I started my career, it's always been in deliverability. I've always liked learning about deliverability. It's this space that has a lot of talent that I would say there's not as many deliverability experts out there. And thankfully, again, there's multiple people out there that are now educating more users, again, me included with it, to teach them the basics of what they need to do to make sure that their emails land in the inbox, especially in this scope of deliverability, which is always changing. You don't know what the regulation is going to be for tomorrow or how to adapt as quickly as possible to get that going. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself. I'm currently the founder of Mission Inbox. I just decided to productize everything that I was seeing at Senders. How do we make it, instead of a consulting agency, to become a SaaS product, right? So how do we make it so that everybody that was paying at that time like around 3.5 to maybe 5K per month just to get a really good and solid infrastructure, how could they get that for a little bit cheaper, but still get at least on par results, if not over exceeding the results, and reach the inbox, get more meetings for themselves, for their clients. We usually work mostly with agencies that are sending cold email, and every now and then we work with a startup that either has just been recently funded or that is a solopreneur that already knows his way around cold emailing, that just needs to send more email out. And taking care of that infrastructure setup, whether it's on Google or Outlook, usually takes a long time. Um, so that's why we created Mission Inbox as a whole. And I'm also into the deliverability component, that IP is the most important component of your deliverability. So within the email world itself, you have two main things that you need to send an email out. You need a server and you need an IP. And a lot of people tend to confuse those two things. So a server is basically where the authentication lives, meaning SPF, DMARC, DKIM, and where you receive the emails out. So meaning, somebody responds to my cold email, I receive it in somewhere, someplace that is stored in the server. However, the server has no effect on the deliverability itself. It is just a way for you to store data. Then, we have what happened with Google back in the day. I would say October last year is around when that happened, where everybody started sending cold email because it's such a profitable channel
Yeah.
that they started acquiring lots of spam complaints. Like the Google's IPs started acquiring lots of spam complaints, to the point that people that were not sending cold email were being affected by this. And they knocked on Google's door saying, hey, what is going on, right? Like, why is it that I'm following best practices? I'm not even sending cold email, and my invoices to my clients are falling into spam. my communication with my customers, like people that are my customers, are falling into spam. How is that possible? And that was due to the absurd number of people now sending cold email, getting spam complaints, and bringing the deliverability down for everyone. Which brings me to the next topic, which is the IP component. The IP is the most important, and it's like a passport, right? So let's say, for example, I'm traveling to, let's call it Colombia for the sake of it. I'm not a
Mhm.
Colombian person, meaning that if I go there, I have to go through TSA, I have to go through multiple control centers before they allow me to go in. That is the same situation that happens when you have a poor IP reputation. You're sharing your IP with other people, therefore you have to go through that harder filtering process. However, if I was a Colombian person, I would just go through the line that says nationals, and I would just get that fast pass, if that makes sense. That is what a dedicated IP or a high quality dedicated IP gives you,
Mm.
which allows you to get into the inbox at a higher rate. That doesn't mean that you cannot go into the inbox in the other, let's say, harder controlling process. They're just going to do more filtering. They're going to check your content. They're going to check a lot of different things that could eventually make you fall into spam. Whereas if you're just a normal citizen, you just go right in and nobody asks any questions. So we have basically built an SMTP provider who's focused on dedicated IPs. And at the same time, I'm building Mission Inbox in a way that it has all the different tools, or it automates most of the processes that I had to run back when I used to run the agency and when I was a CSM and when I was a sales manager, which was, pretty much checking every single email account for my clients to make sure that they were landing in the inbox. We're currently natively connected to Glockups. So every single one of the mailboxes that you have created with Mission Inbox also gets a test, which allows you to keep a pulse on deliverability. Meaning that
Mm.
instead of going into I like making this comparison where deliverability is like going to the doctor, where nobody goes to the doctor unless they're feeling sick. Nobody cares about deliverability until you say your open rates or your reply rates going down, and that's when you flag it and say, okay, I maybe need to take a look into my account. Mission Inbox is this preventive measure that as soon as something starts hitting in spam, because again, we're not perfect, you can still go to spam. It's the name of the game. It's called email. That you're still able to at least know which accounts you have to turn off, what sort of suggestion, because we also test your copy, which sort of suggestion or part of the copy is making you fall into spam. And that guarantees that overall your outreach is always going to be 10 out of 10 in terms of deliverability, in terms of results. You're not burning through leads, you're not wasting copy, you're not getting more spam complaints simply because you're sending from a spam email, which you already know is guaranteed to reach into spam. And that's what our clients enjoy from working with us. So enough about myself. Let's go. Let's keep on going.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And it sounds like you guys are on a mission to inbox. Literally, it resonates with your brand name.
Yeah.
So, Anthony, these days we hear a lot about ESPs are going strict, right, on cold emailing. So,
Yes.
what are your thoughts on that?
I would say that it's only going to get stricter, in my opinion, and it is important to know the history as to why this is a thing.
Okay.
IPs are basically like locations, right? There's only so many locations in the world. There's only so many places in the world. So whenever you see an account or somebody burning an IP, it potentially costed that company around 200,000 emails dollars to acquire the IP. Then they have to warm it up, and it's a lot of maintenance that they have to take care of for a single IP.
Hmm.
So whenever you see people, or let's say Google, for example, Google or Outlook at this point, banning users or making you fall into spam right off the bat is because they need to protect themselves and their other users, because IPs are not something that you can just spin up right away. Like, they're limited. They're made for cold emailing. They're made for mailing as a whole. And whenever something like this goes bad, they have to make regulations to ensure that the users that are not doing anything are not affected by it. Because at the end of the day, that's what most of the people use emailing for. um, so I can only see it going even stricter, at least on the main ESPs, meaning Google, Outlook, Yahoo, let's say GMX, and maybe sometimes AWS. Those are the ones that are going to keep on following regulations, ensuring that, for example, every single user has DMARC, DKIM, etc. Everybody knows about these things, hopefully, at this point. Those are now requirements, are not nice to haves as they were in the past. Now those are needed. And I can only see it going stricter simply out of the fact that these companies are trying to protect their own users, not from receiving unwanted emails or cold emailing as a whole. It is to avoid the cold emailers from affecting their deliverability and making their customers send an invoice to spam. Like, you cannot imagine how tough it is to get the accounts receivable when your emails and invoices are in spam, and the clients can always say, "Oh, I didn't see it. Sorry." right? So it's a lot of there's a lot of departments, not only sales or marketing, that can get affected by a bad and poor deliverability. Accounting gets affected, finance gets affected,
Yeah.
operations gets affected. So I can see that going a little bit deeper in that the strictness or aggressiveness into filtering. At the same time, it also opens the door for other players to come in and say, okay, what if instead of using Google's CSP, you use a
Mm.
third party ESP that can reach Google CSP at a higher deliverability, Microsoft at the same rate, other users at the same rate? And I would say that maybe Google is eventually going to acquire these companies simply out of Google doing their monopoly thing. But that's where I see it going pretty often. It's now forcing people to bring more emails down, to send less emails per mailbox, for example. I remember when I started, I was sending around 125 emails per day on the first step, that is excluding the second and third steps of my sequences, from a single mailbox. And this mailbox used to get 70, 80% deliverability or open rate generally. Nowadays, if you can send 25 emails per mailbox, you're lucky. So I can only see that volume going down, which is why people are now looking into different alternatives.
Mhm. It's all about just you know using, I think, sending cold emailing wisely, right?
Yes, be mindful.
Yeah. Okay. And the next one is, either you see B2B businesses, right, or early stage agencies, lead generation agencies, or other agencies who send cold emails, right? They make a lot of mistakes. So what are the common mistakes they make?
I would say that people, again, going back into the DMARC, DKIM, etc., there is, I would say, not as many resources as they should be on how to get your infrastructure DNS settings set up.
Mm.
Thankfully, if you ask ChatGPT, they will literally tell you what it is. So, guys, whenever you have a doubt, ChatGPT it out. It's going to give you the best solution as to which records you have to add. And I would say overall, you need to start educating yourself as to what they mean. Like, people know about SPF, DKIM, DMARC. They don't know what they do, right? So
Hmm.
it is not only doing it for, oh yeah, somebody told me that I have to do it. Understand the reason why, so you can see why it is important in the first place, to then take an action upon it. So making sure that your DNS settings are set up correctly. At the same time, if you're going to be tracking opens, do set up a custom tracking domain for your accounts. Whether you're using any sending platform, you need to guarantee that you have a custom tracking domain. Otherwise, you're going to go back into something that I like calling the poop in the pool situation, where if somebody else that you're sharing the IP with or this tracking pixel with it starts going into spam or it starts getting marked as spam, since you're sharing that same pixel, your email will eventually fall into spam as well. So by having a custom tracking domain, you basically guarantee that only you send from that specific pixel or it's unique to you, removing the poop in the pool situation. Nobody can shit on your deliverability. Sorry for the French. Um, I would say that also the something that I see really often is people not knowing what a spin tax is, even though the platforms might allow the spin tax, right? So spin tax in general, for all those that don't know, is a way for you to randomize a certain amount of words within your copy so that it looks a little bit different in every single email that you send out. So let's say, for example, I can have a hi, then hey, and then hello. You put that within brackets, and this email is going to send a different variation so that it increases the chances of you reaching the inbox because the ESPs don't recognize your email as being the same one that you're sending. And there's multiple GPT generators out there, which are honestly 10 out of 10, that they're all working great, that do it for you. So again, on your side, the process that you have to follow is just create your copy as you would normally do, get that copy, put it into Spintax GPT or whatever the name it is, get that Spintax variation, of course, adjust it as you see fit. If there's any wording that you don't like, do edit it, and then pull it into your sales engagement platform to make sure that whatever you're sending actually is accurate. So that is the one thing. People are not as Spintax into the extent that they're doing. I would say if you're not doing clay, weird workflows and shenanigans,
Hmm.
Spintax is what's going to save your emails instead of the old days in the past where you sent one single template. That's about the only thing that you tested. That's about it. And then I would say something that a lot of people might know, but they don't necessarily recognize as often, is the signature. Let's put an example. Let's say you onboarded a new client today, or you're doing prospecting for yourself, and you want to reach a volume of, let's call it 500 emails per day. You need to create lots of mailboxes. Let's call it 20, just to give a number out. You want to get to 20 mailboxes, and most likely you're going to create them all with the same first and last name. In my case, it would be Tony Baltodano. Different
Mm.
variations of that Tony Baltodano and different domains at the end of the day. However, when I go and create my signature and when I bulk upload my signature into every one of these mailboxes, most likely they're all going to say the same thing, right? So having that premise, it is really really important that you keep your signature as simple as possible, because even with the spin tags in your email, even with AI personalization in your email, the one thing that never changes email by email is your signature. It will always look the same, it will always have the same thing. It's going to affect you greatly, especially if you have, for example, websites. If you have like W equals and then your domain.com, that's not going to work out. Even if you're sending it in plain text, which I think is also a big misconception. People don't recognize that even sending a domain like www.domain.com
Yeah, that
with plain
naked
text,
URL.
exactly, no URL will still make you fall into spam because of the .com. ESPs already know about this trick, therefore they're going to make you go into spam. And also, I see something in U.S. companies mostly, where they add the phone number, and this is honestly, in my experience, and again, I have around what at this point 40 million emails under my belt, like cold emails across all my career. I have never, not single once, received a call from somebody saying, "Oh, I saw your cold email. I want to chat." Never. People usually do it for the sake of getting a more social proof or to ensure that you're a real person instead of a spammer. In my experience, I would rather people think that I'm a spammer and getting into the inbox that than having my phone number in the signature itself and not even reaching the inbox in the first place. So keeping your signatures as simple as possible. And in some cases, don't even put the signature, just a spin text, the text of your signature with different variations like Tony Baltodano at Mission Inbox, Tony, co-founder at Mission Inbox. Like again, you can play with these different variations until you see which one works best for you. And that guarantees that your emails will have a larger longevity, meaning that they stay alive for a longer period of time without having deliverability issues. And at the same time, um, that you have a higher rate of deliverability overall. That's the I would say main three mistakes that I see of people. Oh, and again, last but not least, you also need to clean your lists. Generally, people again, whether they're using different SEPs for sending, sometimes they get their data from Sales Navigator, from Apollo, from Prospio, from Find Email, from multiple different providers. The thing is, I've learned to not be as trustworthy of what they call verified. I can talk about like my personal experience with Apollo specifically, where my verified and likely to engage lists, by
Mhm.
running them through Emailable, which is I would say like the most accurate platform. It's way more expensive, but way more accurate. Is around 80 to maybe 75% accurate, meaning that you have 25 to
Mm.
20% that is always going to be risky, meaning it
Mm.
has a higher chance of bouncing. More often than not, you're also going to have just unvalid emails straight out. So verifying your lists and double verifying them with multiple providers is what I've found to be as successful as possible. You can have the best infrastructure out there, but if you're
Yeah,
sending to shitty emails, who cares, right? Nobody's going to see it, and it's only going to hurt your reputation. So I would say those are my top four, if anything,
I
out of the
think
most
the
common mistakes.
last one impacts a lot, right? If you're just sending out emails to the risky, prospects, then
The risky, the
yeah,
catch-alls, all these different things, for sure.
true, true. So so the next one is about email warm up, right? So whenever we get new email accounts, then we put them on email warm up, right? Auto warm up. So how many days you recommend to keep them on warm up or auto warm up?
Okay. I'm going to try to go into realistic scenarios and then ideal scenarios. And I'll go into why warm up makes sense. I've seen a lot of people talking about like warm up is dead, you shouldn't warm up, etc. I haven't seen any hard data out of those claims of people saying, yeah, my emails have better deliverability or they stay alive for a longer period of time compared to those with warm up. I would say you need to warm up your mailboxes for at least 14 days. I'm not going to say 2 weeks, but rather 14 days. And there's a reason for this. If you think about a spammer, what do they usually do? They go by multiple domains, multiple mailboxes, usually with weird terminations like .xyz,
Hmm.
whatever. That is a spammer behavior. And what does spammer want to do? They want to send emails as quickly as they can to scam more people. That's like the bottom line. So ESPs, what they did is they're looking into the date of registration of that domain. If you're sending emails, cold emails, meaning that they have a chance of falling into spam, and you get a spam report within the first 14 days, that email is going to have a really, really hard time of ever reaching the inbox in the future. So it's not only about putting the emails in warm up, doing the ramp up volume, etc., which I'm going to go into details, but it's more so about just waiting natural days, meaning 14 days. Whether you're warming up or not warming up, you need to wait 14 days for that to happen.
Hmm.
Ideally, you want to wait 28 days, which is when the ESPs just say, okay, you're good to go. It has already been sent out. There's no issue. But being realistic, again, no client as an agency, you will not get a client this month and tell them, hey, we're going to send until next month. That's not realistic. So at least wait the 14 days. And if you want to do something else, just do LinkedIn outreach. At least in the meantime, have some cold callers, trying to get some meetings so you can reduce the anxiety for the first clients. But that's about it. So in general, do always warm up your mailboxes.
Hmm.
Do it in a daily ramp up. One mistake that I see people doing is that they bump the volume up to maybe 30 emails per day from the get go. I prefer my preferred way of doing things is a daily ramp up of 5 emails per day, keeping reply rate, if you can adjust it in your SEP, at 30%. And once you're ready for sending, after the 14 days, bump the reply rate to maybe 60%. And here's a quick math that I can share with you guys really quickly. Let's say I have 30 emails going out on warm up at a
Hmm.
30% reply rate. That's going
Okay.
to be a total of 9 emails overall that I get responded to. If I'm going to double my volume once I start sending emails, because I want to send also 30 emails per day, that's going to mean that my current reply rate by volume is now not 30%, but rather 15%. It's 90 out of 60, right? Sorry, 9 out of 60. So what you want to do is basically as soon as you adjust the volume or you start doubling your volume, to start also adjusting your reply rate so that the ESPs always see that you still have the same 30%. If you double that to maybe 60, it's now going to be a total of 18 emails. What is 18 out of 60? 30%. So that is one tip that, again, it usually takes a while to get that going. But it's a tip that I've found to be really, really successful. ESPs don't care about it. You have better deliverability overall. And it's something that I can talk from personal experience. And every single client on Mission Inbox follows that same process. Um, there's also a term that Lemlist made popular. I think it was back in 2018, approximately, which is the always be warming. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean that after warm up you need to turn it off or that you should turn it off. No, always, always, always be warming so that you can guarantee that as soon as you start hitting spam, because again we're sending cold email, it is expected that you have some sort of let's say cushion that you can fall into where it's not going to affect you as much. Again, going into total volume and recovering reputation, etc. It is really, really essential that you guys, well, pretty much take care of that front. So by having the warm up, always be warming. Do not over exceed the number of warm up emails that you can send out. Just keep it at 30. If you send more than that, there is a chance that you can trigger Google spam. And if you're in Google spam, it's really, really difficult to get that out of that gel spam, the spam gel. So yeah, just keep it at 30. Do a realistic 5 per day increment until you hit 30, and just keep it there. Once you're sending, double that reply rate to 60%.
Yeah. So the final answer is always keep warming up, but keep the limit around 30 or under 30, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And then if we get a lot of queries around, yeah, so my sender reputation is damaged, right? So is there any way to recover it? If yes, then how?
Okay. So short answer is yes. You can recover reputation of a domain. I'm gonna make an analogy into maybe committing a crime. Let's say I robbed someone. If I started falling into spam at some point, which brought my deliverability down, is the same as if I was caught by a police officer while I was robbing. I'm gonna go into jail, etc. What that does essentially is bring in my criminal record history as I robbed once. So that domain or that mailbox has an I spammed once sort of criminal record on the spam jail.
Yeah.
What do you usually do after you have robbed someone? Hopefully you haven't, but just entertain me for a second. You need to show people that you're not robbing anymore. You're not the same person that you used to be that used to rob people, right? But at the same time, again, this reputation builds time to take. It takes time to build, right? So it's not like you just warm up for a couple weeks and you're back on track. No, If a domain is really, really damaged, you always need to assess how damaged it is by checking into multiple blacklist checkers, etc. Blacklists usually get away or get removed like after 30 days, depending on which blacklist you got into. But you need to show the ESPs that you're not that same person that used to send spam from that mailbox. This process usually takes about 3 to 6 months. In my
Okay.
personal opinion, can you recover reputation? Yes. Should you recover reputation? In most cases, my answer is going to be no. Because what would you rather? Either buy a new domain that you can warm up for 2 weeks and then keep on sending, or keep on paying for a mailbox that you need to wait for around 6 months. So it's going to be, let's say you're paying Google $6. It's going to be a total of $36 where you could just bought like maybe six new mailboxes, warm them up, etc. That's why a lot of people are into this. I'll just trash it. I'll just get new ones, etc. So that's about it. You need to show people, if you want to increase the reputation of your brand domain, that you're not sending emails anymore or that you're not sending spam anymore. But at the same time, it is still in your criminal record history. And what
Yeah.
does that mean? It means that as soon as I start sending cold email again, meaning everybody in the industry knows that I'm not sending spam, and I receive a single spam complaint, it is really highly likely that all the effort that I just did for this past 6 months brought all the effort down. Why? Because I already have a criminal record of spamming people. So you can see your mailbox again getting disconnected, or again getting banned, or again falling into spam at a quicker rate, simply because you were banned at some point. So that is the essence. Can you
So
do it? Yes. Should you do it?
yes.
Maybe.
Okay. It means that particular domain will no more useful for sending cold emails
You could do it, but
on a higher volume.
exactly, exactly. At a higher volume, you shouldn't. You really want to avoid that going.
Then it makes sense. The next one is many people say ESP matching generates better results. What do you think on that?
So I don't have any hard data to really, really show, at least in my experience. And again, I usually use Google, Outlook, etc., just to measure against Mission Inbox itself, to see if there is anything that we should improve, that we could improve, what are they doing differently, etc. Whenever I do provider matching, at least I have this, I want to say, like placebo effect of it working out. I've seen a lot of people getting into better deliverability from an Outlook account into, well, Office 365 into a Gmail account, and then Gmail to Gmail in lots of cases. So I'm not going to say that it's an absolute truth. I would say it doesn't hurt you anything if your SEP allows for ESP matching. If you have Google mailboxes and Outlook mailboxes, just make use of the feature. If it works, then you can only win. If it doesn't work, then you're not losing anything. So it's a game that you're always winning at the end of the day, and it gives you some sort of placebo effect that you're reaching at a higher rate. I would say though that Google is becoming a lot tougher to reach, even from Google accounts and from Microsoft accounts. It's usually the first thing that starts falling into spam. Outlook generally, no matter from which ESP or SMTP provider for that matter, will most likely always accept your emails. That is pretty much the bottom line. So if you have it, make use of it. It doesn't hurt you anything. If anything, it could improve your results, right? So you never know. You don't have that hard data. I don't have that hard data. There's a lot of people that already have, and they don't show that much of a difference, if I'm honest with you.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm not going to say that it makes a full difference.
Got it. Got it. Video personalization is something we are seeing a lot these days.
Mhm.
Everyone is talking about video personalization, and using video in your cold emails can increase your reply rate or something like that, right? I don't, we haven't tested yet it, but just wanted to know your thoughts. Does
Mhm.
it impact on your email delivery or not?
The answer is yes. It will impact your deliverability because for people to see your email, you either have to send it through an MP4, which is going to be really, really, really heavy on the email, making you fall into spam, or
Okay.
you have to add a link, which is often not the case, right? You have to add a link where it's like, hey, I created a video for you, explaining about XYZ, then cool. It's still a link nonetheless. And again, I think it's the industry knowledge at this point that you shouldn't send links in your emails if you want to get great results. Whether you're tracking links or tracking opens or not tracking anything, you should avoid link tracking or adding links into your emails as much as possible. However, I do see the appeal, for example, from people wanting to use a tool like SendSpark, for example, Be Human, like all these different providers that just personalize at scale, which is fantastic. I would say if you can send them or do it through maybe LinkedIn, that could work great. That I know a lot of people that do it that way. Just don't try to do it in your cold emailing. However, if you're stubborn like I am and you want to just test it out just to prove a concept and that this actually makes sense, there's a few ways that you can try it out. The first one is do try to remove or well, try no, remove any sort of tracking, meaning you're not going to track opens, you're not going to track clicks, you're just going to send the link. And FYI, you need like the email formatting changes whenever you add a link. If it is plain text, it is not going to be a hyperlink. As soon as you have a hyperlink, it becomes an HTML text. HTML by nature sends at a higher rate to spam than plain text because it's heavier, straight out. But if you remove any sort of tracking, any sort of everything, at least you're making some way for the email to reach its way into the inbox. But don't do it at scale. Don't do the same template. Don't send as many videos personalized. It can work great. I would actually suggest you get in specific mailboxes that you're going to be using for video personalization so that it doesn't affect pretty much everything else because you're almost guaranteed to burn that domain in a few weeks, more often than not. So low volume is the play for
Yeah.
personalization in videos, especially because it's already expensive enough as it is to get it going. Don't track anything. The other approach that I've seen a lot of people do is you want to send a first email that is super innocent, meaning a normal email that has plain text overall, that is almost guaranteed to reach the inbox if you have a good infrastructure and if the domain is not burned. What you do then is in the second step of your sequence, you can add a link. And the reason for that is because whenever I send an email into the inbox, a response bringing the full thread to spam, while it is possible, it is not as likely. Whereas if you send the first email with the link, it is most likely gonna go into spam right off the bat, meaning people won't see it. So that is one way of doing it. And I would say the third option is if you want to send a personalized like video message, maybe do it as a CTA. Like, hey, I created a video for you. Would you mind if I added you or if I sent it to you? And then there's multiple tools out there, different SCPs that allow for subsequences. So if there is anybody that you move it into the CTA, they respond with yes, meaning it's already a positive response. You can automatically move that person into a subsequence that contains their personalized email. And again, it's just a matter of putting the lit list with that email as a link. You put the snippet of personalized video, and that's about it. So those are the main three ways. Just to summarize it: remove all tracking, send an innocent email first, and then in the second step, you can send the link. It's gonna not be as likely to bring the full thread down into spam. Or the third one is make it as a CTA so that people can get enrolled into a subsequence where they can then receive the full email.
Hmm. Got it. Got it. And the next one is, where do you see the future of cold email outreach?
Where do I see it?
Yeah.
So I see it as becoming more of an omni-channel sort of solution where you have cold email, but it's not necessarily your main focus for prospecting. So I see a lot of people now using tools like Prosp.ai or HeyReach for LinkedIn prospecting. I would say that people that are getting great results, at least for enterprise, I'm going to talk about enterprise first and then into normal agencies. That is potentially what you want to start doing. You want to integrate multiple different platforms into a single place. You have a lead list, send it into your smart lead account instantly, you know, like growth machine, etc. And depending on triggers, on actions, meaning somebody opened that email or they have seen that email X amount of times, that's when they can get pulled into maybe LinkedIn, just to maximize your chances because it's gonna get harder overall. Just to get into a perspective, it's gonna go harder or it's gonna get harder reaching the inbox in the future. So you want to maximize the amount of channels or places that people can look at you, right? It's just gonna it is not even that you're affecting their attention, it's just that inbox placement is becoming a lot tougher nowadays. So I would say that you need to look into alternatives into your email sequencing just to add more to it, meaning you do instead of doing cold email outreach, you just do cold outreach. And this cold outreach is part of email, is part of LinkedIn, it's part of let's call RB2B with the website retention visitor. All these different things are what's going to make it as most successful for your clients, for yourself. But in the cold email world in a specific, where do I see it getting stricter, which is what I spoke about a little bit earlier. I see people needing to send less emails per mailbox per month pretty soon. I would say the next 4 to 5 months potentially. I do see people getting or creating multiple credit cards. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but again, when you are creating new tenants and new workspaces, etc., you need to create different credit cards, different debit cards, and in some cases, they're now like tracing it back to the origin of the bank account. So even if from one bank account I have multiple different credit cards, I can get blocked. So it is just going to be tougher, which is actually good news. It is going to weed out a lot of people that were thinking about doing cold emailing, but
Hmm.
just because the barrier of entry is now so complicated, or it's getting way tougher, that a lot of people are going to drop out of that game, allowing you, if you follow pretty much all the steps, and again, if you're reading this, you're already ahead of a lot of people. Um, Allowing you to just get rid of the competitors and be, I'm not going to say the only player in the game, but definitely one of the only players that knows how to do these things. So it's like
Hmm.
this backwards psychology where it's getting tougher for everyone, meaning that, oh, we need to look for a different alternative. No, what you need to do is educate yourself so that you always have an edge in deliverability. Always keep in touch with what's happening in the deliverability world as a whole, and then from that point, you should be, I would say, pretty much good to go from that point forward. Yep.
That's awesome. I think more or less sniper approach would work more in future.
Yeah, correct.
Got it. Okay. Uh, if sales and users wants to use mission inbox, right, in future, then how they can use?
Yep. So, well, pretty easy. Just head over to missioninbox.com. You're gonna see a toggle in the header, which is like try for free. At that point, I'm gonna get a notification. I'm gonna reach out to you so that I can walk you through the onboarding. Again, we're pretty robust platform overall, so you need to get to know like the ins and outs of what it is, how you can see your alerts on lockups, etc. But yeah, just heading over to our website at missioninbox.com, creating your free trial. I'll be reaching out to you, or reach out to me directly on LinkedIn at Anthony Baltodano, and I'm more than happy to just give you a quick demo.
Great. And this is the time for rapid fire questions. Which ESP is the best for delivery?
Google.
Okay, why?
I would say that Google is so widely used by people across the world that unless you're reaching out to enterprise customers, which is not necessarily the case for a lot of people, you don't need to have a Microsoft account. Google just makes do with what you need. And it's also way easier to set up than an Outlook account is. So, just out of talking about deliverability specifically, unless you're reaching out to more than 500 employee count companies, Google is always going to be the best. If your ICP is, enterprise, go with Outlook. But for the most amount of cases and general use of people, do end up using Google.
Okay. How many email accounts one should connect with a domain, ideally?
Ideally, it's going to be one. So one domain, one mailbox. Realistically, two.
What?
No more than two. No more than two. Please don't do more than two.
Okay, one domain and one email account you are suggesting, right?
That is suggesting. However, again, I know costs go all the way up, so you can push it to two, and you're still going to be somewhat okay.
Okay. Number one enemy of email deliverability.
Following trends with no hard data to back up their claims, and not sticking to the basics of what you know works, just following somebody else that, "Yeah, I'm not doing this because of XYZ." Like, no, just stick to the basics. Don't overcomplicate things, and don't follow things trends unless they really have hard data to show it for a long period of time. It's like a FDA approval. It takes time to know if it actually works out.
What is your go-to tool for measuring email deliverability?
Lockups.
Adding links in your cold emails. Yes or no?
No, no, yeah, just no. Don't.
Okay. So it's time to wrap. So thank you so much, Anthony, for sharing kind of insights on email delivery. We got to learn a lot of about email delivery, ESPs, and the new trends, what is happening in the market. I think your knowledge in email delivery is, I think, immense, I would say. Yeah, it was great discussion with you.
I
Thank you so
appreciate it.
much.
Okay. Thank you, and again, thank you for the Sales Anti community for listening so far.
Thank you.